Okay, let's get on with the story here. We're reading a chapter out of In God We Trust, All Others Pay Cash. In fact, it's the first chapter, and the title of this chapter of this work, which was published, by the way, in 1961 by Doubleday, and is available still in paperback. The paperback company in this case being Dolphin. If you're curious about picking up a copy, it's called In God We Trust, All Others Pay Cash, and it's Dolphin, number C486. And now I go on with the story. This is the first chapter. Of course, I must also add quickly, if you're following it, some people follow it, by the way, as I read. It's been edited for air because it's far too long to read in the short time we have. However, there's the Christmas window in Goldblatt's. This is fiction, by the way, for those of you who are curious. There are no people of this type really around, but it is a fiction story, and originally appeared in Playboy. It was a good year, maybe a great one. Like a swelling Christmas balloon, the excitement mounted until the whole town tossed restlessly in bed and made plans for the big day. Already my own scheme was well underway, my personal dream. Casually, carefully, calculatingly, I had booby-trapped the house with copies of Open Road for Boys, all open to Red Ryder's slit-eyed face. My father, a great John reader, found himself for the first time in his life in alien literary waters. My mother, grabbing for her copy of Screen Romances, found herself cleverly euchred into reading a Red Ryder sales pitch. I had stuck a copy of Open Road for Boys inside the cover, showing Clark Gable clasping Loretta Young to his heaving breast. At breakfast, I hinted that there was a rumor of loose bears in the neighborhood. I was ready to deal with them, if I had the proper equipment, of course. At first, my mother and the old man did not rise to the bait, and I began to grow anxious, and of course, inevitably, overplayed my hand. Christmas was only 2 weeks away. I couldn't waste time with subtlety or droll innuendo. My brother, occasionally emerging from under the daybed during this critical period, was already well involved in some private little brother persiflage of his own, involving an erector set with motor, capable of constructing drawbridges, Eiffel Towers, Ferris wheels, and operating guillotines. I knew that if he got wind of my scheme, all was lost. He would then begin wheedling and whining for what I wanted, which would result in nobody scoring, since he was obviously too young for deadly weapons. So I cleverly pretended that what I wanted, nothing more, was just a simple, utilitarian, unpretentious Sandy Andy, a highly symbolic educational toy popular at the time, consisting of a kind of funnel under which was mounted a tiny conveyor belt of little scoop-like gondolas. It came with a bag of white sand that was poured into the funnel. The sand, trickling out of the bottom into the gondola, set the belt in motion. As each gondola was filled, it moved back down the track to be replaced by another, which, when filled, moved down another notch, and endlessly they went, dumping sand out at the bottom of the track and starting up the back loop to be refilled again, on and on, until all the sand was deposited in the red cup at the bottom of the track. The kid then emptied the cup into the funnel and started over again, ceaselessly, senselessly, round and round. How like life itself. It was the perfect toy to teach a kid what it's all about. Through my brain, however, there dashed and danced visions of six-guns snapped from the hip and shattering bottles, and a gnawing, nameless frenzy of impending ecstasy. Well, I had to do something about it. And so one day, my mother, leaning over a pot of simmering oatmeal, suddenly asked out of the blue, "What would you like for Christmas?" Horrified, I heard myself blurt, "A Red Ryder BB gun!" Without pausing or even missing a stroke with her tablespoon, she shot back, "Oh no, you'll shoot out your eyes." It was a classic mother BB gun block. I was sunk. That deadly phrase, used many times before by hundreds of mothers, was not surmountable by any means known to kiddom. I had really booted it. Such was my mania, my desire for a Red Ryder carbine, that I immediately began to rebuild the dike. I was just kidding. Even though Flick is getting one, Flick's getting one. That was a lie, of course. I guess, what I'd like is a Sandy Andy, I guess. I watched the back of her Chinese red chenille bathrobe anxiously, waiting for any sign that my shaft had struck home. They're dangerous. I don't want anybody shooting their eyes out. The boom was lowered, and I was under it. With leaden heart and frozen feet, I waddled to school. At recess time, little banks of kids huddled together for warmth amid the craggy, gray snowbanks and the howling gale. The telephone wires overhead whistled like banshees, while the trapeze rings and the swings clanked hollowly as Schwartz and Flick and Bruner and I discussed the most important thing, next to what I'm going to get for Christmas, which was what I'm getting my mother and father for Christmas. We talked in hushed, hoarse whispers to guard against security leaks. Schwartz, his eyes darting like a foreign agent, leaned over and said, "I'm getting my father a new flit gun." Sheer creative brilliance. A flit gun. That's for spraying mosquitoes. What a fantastic creative idea. "I'm getting my old man a rose that squirts water," said Flick. So we talked back and forth. I wouldn't even discuss what I was going to get. Not a way. And so time went on. And more it began to look like I was not going to get my BB gun. And so finally, at the far end of Toyland in Goldblatt's, which was on the 3rd floor, is a Santa Claus. A big Santa Claus, sitting there on his throne, asking kids what they wanted for Christmas. I figured I'd try it. On a snowy throne, framed with red and white candy canes under a suspended squadron of plastic angels, blowing silver trumpets in a glowing golden grotto, sat the man, the connection, Santa Claus himself. In northern Indiana, Santa Claus is a big man, both spiritually and physically, and the Santa Claus at Goldblatt's was officially recognized among kids as being unquestionably the Santa Claus, in person. 8 feet tall, shiny, high, black patent leather boots, a nimbus cloud of snow-white beard, and a real thrumming, belt-creaking stomach, no pillows or stuffing, I mean a real stomach. A long line of nervous, fidgeting, greedy urchins wound in and out of the aisles, shoving, sniffling, and above all waiting to tell him what they wanted. In those days, it was not easy to disbelieve fully in Santa Claus, because there wasn't much else to believe in. There were many theological arguments over the nature of, the existence of, the affirmation and denial of his existence. However, 10 days before 0 hour, the air pulsing to the strains of "We Three Kings of Orient Are," the store windows garlanded with green and red wreaths, and the toy department bristling with sleds, there were few who dared to disbelieve. As each day crept on to the next like some glacier, an arthritic glacier, the atheists among us grew moodier and less sure of ourselves, until finally, in each scoffing heart was the floating, drifting, nagging suspicion. Well, you never can tell. It did not pay to take chances, and so we waited in line for our turn. Behind me, a skinny 7-year-old girl wearing a brown stocking cap and gold-rimmed glasses hit her little brother steadily to keep him in line. She had green teeth. He was wearing an aviator's helmet with the goggles pulled down over his eyes. His galoshes were open and his maroon corduroy knickers were damp. Behind them, a fat boy in a huge sheepskin coat stood numbly, his eyes watering in vague fear, his nose red and running. Ahead of my brother and me, a long, uneven procession of stocking caps, mufflers, mittens, and earmuffs inched painfully forward, while in the hazy distance, in his magic glowing cave, Mr. Claus sat, each in turn on his broad red knee, and whispered to exultant dream after exultant dream. Closer and closer we crept. My mother and father had stashed us in line and disappeared. We were alone. Nothing stood between us and our confessor, our benefactor, our dispenser of BB guns, and 297 other beseechers at the throne.